everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Expedite the Process, Navigating the CARES Act for Maximum Impact. This is brought to you by the President's Council and CLE consulting firm. My name is Erica Pennick, and I am the Executive Director of the President's Council. While today's webinar quickly surpassed our intended maximum capacity, and we limited registration to ensure time for direct question and answers and create an environment that is truly interactive, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the President's Council website. We also encourage and welcome the opportunity to connect via phone, email, and web chat. Before we get started, please note your video should be automatically turned off and devices muted. If not, please do so at this time. As you have questions or comments, please insert it in the Q&A thread, and we will pause frequently to respond. If you have a question or comment for a presenter, please click the raise your hand button and we will pause to recognize you, at which time your device should be unmuted and video turned on. Today's expert presenters are Gil Goldberg, the District Director of the Cleveland Small Business Association. Gil is responsible for the administration of a business portfolio of over 6,400 individual loans for a total of more than $604 million. Gil also has oversight of the Ohio Small Business Development Center and 17 business centers, and is responsible for the marketing efforts of the 2 SBA-sponsored microlenders in the district, as well as the delivery and oversight of the agency's government contracting programs for small business, and serves as the national SBA representative under the agency's lender liaison program for Key Bank. Before coming to the SBA in 1994, Gil spent 20 years in commercial banking. Gil holds a bachelor's degree in foreign service from Georgetown University and a master's degree in business administration from the University of Notre Dame. Larice Purnell is co-owner and managing partner of CLE consulting firm, an accounting, tax, and payroll company located in downtown Cleveland. Larice is the author of Financial Foundations, Building Financial Freedom, One Tool at a Time. Larice holds an MBA in finance from the University of Toledo and is currently pursuing his master's in accountancy from John Carroll University in corporate taxation with an expected completion date of December 2020. Larice is committed to the community and its residents and serves on several boards, including the YMCA of Greater Cleveland, the Cleveland Clinic South Point Hospital, Cleveland Public Library Foundation, the NAACP Cleveland Branch, and the Council for Economic Opportunities in Greater Cleveland. Jamie Warder is the Executive VP and Head of Digital Marketing at Key Corp. Prior to joining Key, Jamie served as the President of USAA Bank in San Antonio, Texas, with previous experience including P&L, product, operations, and channel roles at Capital One and PNC Bank. Before banking, Jamie was an associate principal with McKinsey & Company and served a variety of clients on strategy and operational topics in both North America and Europe. Prior to transitioning to a business career, Jamie was a captain in the United States Army, serving as an armor and cavalry officer. Jamie currently sits on a variety of nonprofit boards, including the President's Council. Jamie graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point with a BS in electrical engineering. He also earned an MBA with high distinction, the George Baker Scholar from the Harvard Business School. At this time, I will turn the conversation over to our panelists. Thank you, Larice.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. And let's see, is it allowing me? Okay. So thank you everyone for being on this call today. I truly appreciate you. I know we are all going through a lot of turmoil and a lot of uncertainty within our businesses and within the community. So I want to first thank Erica Pennick from the President's Council for pulling us all together and bringing this level of experts to the table to make sure that we're here and we're also allowing you to have a voice today and answer questions that may just be on your mind that you just have not been able to get answers to. So again, Eric, I want to thank you for this opportunity and this partnership. But we'll go ahead and jump right in. If you know me in this community in any way from a lecturer perspective, I'll ask throughout this. I think there's going to be a lot of great information shared. So I want you to make sure that you have your pens, your paper, or pull your phone out and have your notes so you can make sure you take some of this information. Just the discussion points and topics we'll be discussing today. We'll talk about the importance of partnerships and share some that you may not have considered to be true partners in this time. We'll give you things to consider, as well as the most common question that we're receiving at CLE, a lot of other of my colleagues, is the PPP program. So we'll break that down, and Jamie and Gil will share more details about the Paycheck Protection Program. And then we have the SBA. Of course, with Gil being on the phone, we would be remiss not to really talk about the options that are being provided through this organization. And then we'll end with who can help. So a lot of the questions are, who do I call if I don't have a staff or I don't have certain partners in place? So we'll make sure we give you some people that you can reach out to after this call, and we'll continue to do that Q&A. So let's jump right in. Partnerships to consider right now, and a lot of these questions or answers have been derived from the questions that we've received and influx throughout CLE, and again, other partners that we're working with within the community, like the President's Council, your business banker. At this time, if you are trying to apply for any of your loans, or you're interested in the PPP, or you have a line of credit, or you're in the midst of obtaining a loan before this, your business banker is going to be a key asset to you at this time. And some of you on this call may say, well, before this, I didn't have a business banker. So again, if you didn't have one prior to this, I would emphasize that this should have taught you that these relationships are important moving forward. Your account. Right now, we're being overwhelmed with people trying to figure out when the key questions are, when am I going to run out of cash? Will I be able to collect on my receivables? Who should I be paying? So make sure that if you don't have an internal person that's working on your finances, that you either acquire or try to, I would say, obtain a relationship with an accountant or CPA to make sure not only are they doing your taxes, but they're helping you look at that bottom line so you can create strategies that will just not maintain you just during COVID, but post-COVID as well. Financial advisors. We have a lot of people, as we're looking at their balance sheets with their organization, they have investment accounts, and of course, with the different fluctuations we're seeing in the market, want to make sure that you're revisiting that, because some of those assets may be an option to help you with cash flow at this time as well. Then your HR consultant. One of the other things that we're also getting as far as one of the top questions is, with all the different changes in payroll taxes that have been proposed, with employees not wanting to come to work because of either illness within their families or their fear of, I would say, getting ill or something of that sort, you want to make sure that you understand the policies to make sure that there's no retaliation, that you're not wrongfully firing employees, and just things to consider from an HR perspective. Then I'll say insurance broker, and I'll break that down in the next slide. But if you haven't talked to your insurance broker, there may be coverages within that within your policies that you may want to consider as well. And then, of course, great organizations like the President's Council, ECDI, and others right here in our community, you want to make sure you're reaching out to them. They have staff. Some of them have created hotlines in order for you to answer questions and talk about some of the challenges that you're having within your business. And then colleagues. One of the things that we've learned through this is you cannot keep up with the information because it's ever changing, and it's changing very rapidly. So even us at CLE, we're reaching out to colleagues within the industry to ask what their best practices are and what their benchmarks are. So if you have a restaurant, well, who's still open? Who's still running their business? Maybe they have some best practices they're utilizing now that's helping them to be effective. If you're in healthcare, what are they doing? So, and on and on and on. So based on the industry you're within, reach out to other colleagues and really share. This is a time we all have to work together to get through these times. So just a couple of things to consider. I mentioned insurance coverages. We want to make sure that you understand that within some of these policies, there's things called stopgap coverages and business interruption. And some of the insurance companies, if you reach out and you try to put a claim in, they may inform you that the virus is not covered under these two coverages, but they're still taking the actual claim because they're being instructed to still taking all claims just in case the government were to come down and decide to give them dollars to accommodate some of these unusual claims. So you still want to go through that process and then utilize your line of credit because cash flow is a big thing with all the uncertainty of how are you going to collect on your receivables, where is cash flow at, and then also other bank products. And Jamie's going to dive a little into that as well, just to assist you with cash flow, because that is a big concern that we're getting in CLE. Larice, Meltrice, the team, when are we going to run out of cash? At what point will we not be able to employ our employees? At what point should we be closing our doors to cut back on costs? And then utilizing technology. If this hasn't taught us anything, is that we have to maximize technology. Just like we're on this call today, everybody in America now is using one of the most powerful tools that they possess, and that's their phone. Everybody is on their phones because they're either looking for a job, they're filing for unemployment, they're applying for the SBA, they're on social media looking for information. So make sure you're maximizing and that you're putting your company at the forefront at this time. So if you're a restaurant, do you have Uber for a delivery service? Do you have DoorDash? Are you utilizing Zoom if you're an attorney or an accountant or any professional service businesses out there? Are you on Teams? Are you utilizing social media, and do you have a website? So those are things to consider from a technology perspective. Now, I would be remiss not to talk about this area because it's so vital right now. I tell most people and colleagues I talk to, the main thing on people's mind right now is their dollars, it's finances, it's how am I going to survive personally as the business owner? How is my business going to survive? And then how are my employees going to survive? So again, you want to work with an accountant, or if you have a finance person internally, you should be talking about what is your payable strategy? How are you going to address your agent report now to address the bills that are outstanding? What are the cash flow issues that you may be facing, and how aggressively do you have to address those? And then receivables. There's still businesses that are still operating. What is the collectability of the receivables and the dollars that are owed and that you're going to invoice for? So those are all real questions that need to be asked. Before I jump into anything else, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jamie, and he's going to break down the PPP. So, hey, just stay tuned and continue to take notes, everybody.
Lori, thank you. And hey, thanks everybody for joining this morning. I can tell you I've been part of the President's Council now for a few years, and just so proud to be part of that organization. And I know many of you are part of it as well, so thank you for that. I hope you all are staying safe and keeping yourself well in these unprecedented times, you and your loved ones. So I'll just start there. Yeah, the PPP program, I think in the banking world, I don't think I had ever said the word PPP. And in the last week, I don't think I've said the word PPP more often. It has been a wild week, I'll say. But I just wanted to share some thoughts. I won't go deeply into the program because, frankly, you can get better information from the government, but just some of the highlights that I know. This is a loan. This is a program built for small and medium-sized enterprises, and small can be sole proprietorships. It can be very small. Designed for companies with employees, but it could be just one employee. So that tends to mean it's very wide-ranging. Up to $10 million. Does include a significant $10 million or 2.5 times payroll, whatever is more, significant forgiveness component. So if you meet certain criteria, It goes from being a loan to really being a grant, which obviously is, just a great deal. Very low rate, 1% rate, 2-year term, no collateral needed, no guarantee needed. So it's just a really wonderful program. And the challenge, of course, is so many need this program, and probably many of you on the phone. That has created unprecedented demand. You are seeing the same things I'm seeing, but just banks overwhelmed with this program. I'll just give you a sense from Key, and I'm not here to talk about Key specifically. I really want to talk about the program, but we're seeing demand in 3 days that's 20 times our annual demand. And it'd be very similar. I know, Gil, knowing what the SBA does, it's very similar for SBA. So I will tell you a couple things. One, I saw in the newspaper this morning the CEO of Fifth Third, which I think probably sums up the way we're thinking about this, which is it's going to be ugly, but we're going to get it done because we need to get it done for our communities. So I kind of like the way he said that. It's right. We're just all trying to figure this out at the same time. We're trying to move fast. We weren't built for this. The banking community, the SBA, the Treasury, we weren't built to have a program that's built in a week and then can, quickly get through this. So we're figuring it out as we go. What I wanted to share with you that I thought might be most helpful, and again, not the details of the program, you do better to go read about that. But I want to tell you, when you do it, the things that I think will make a difference, because I like to say the difference between a perfect package and a package that has problems that we're going to have to go back and forth on to perfect is time. And I know in this age, what we want to do is try to everybody go as fast as possible. So I'm just going to give some thoughts on what I think will help when you do your application, will help you have that kind of more perfect package, if you will. Here's the things I would have ready. The IRS Form 941. And if you have that for quarterly for all 4 quarters of 2019, that's helpful. So have any IRS Form 941s ready to go. Your payroll files, you have to show that you had a business on February 15th, I believe it is, so that you were a pre-existing company. If you can show 2019 and 20, and not all of you will be able to do that, but be able to show your payroll files and be able to highlight, make it clear your average 2019 payroll, if that applies to you, and your 2020 payroll. Just, circle it, make it very clear. Be able to very quickly allow a credit underwriter to look and see what your monthly average payroll was. And again, if it's just you, then be able to show that. Your organizational documents, the documents that say how is your business organized, your entity documents, that could be, there's a variety of these depending on how you're organized, but usually it's a legal document. Usually it shows your TIN number, but you want to be able to show proof of, hey, I'm an LLC, I'm an S Corp, and have those ready. A sole proprietorship. Any partner or owner that has more than a 20% stake. This is required by some of the money laundering rules. Any owner with more than 20% stake, you need to have their full and legal name, social security number, current address. Don't make mistakes on those things. If you make mistakes on those things, on any of these things, you can probably submit an application without them. It's just going to delay it. And then finally, if there's one number I want you to double check, say it out loud, it's that TIN. Believe it or not, we've had 4% of all of the applications at Key have the wrong TIN. And that just, you know, it takes a week to figure it out. Now we'll have to go back and take a week to correct it. So just triple check, because so many things we can't submit to Gil and the SBA unless we know that Ken is right. So I think the next thing I wanted to say, so just think about having those things ready. Some of you probably already applied. If, by the way, you applied without some of those things I talked about, it wouldn't hurt to email those in. Go ahead and email those in to whoever is helping you with this application. Now let's talk about that. Who's helping you? Because I really bucket the banking community. I think there's kind of three different sizes of banks. There's the local community bank, and typically that's person to person. You're doing a lot of work with somebody. The benefit of that is there's somebody you can call, there's somebody you can talk to, and they are, by the way, usually manually entering all of this information into the SBA. So it's much more personalized. That's the upside, I think, of the community bank. And what I would say is if you can work with one of those community banks and a person at the community bank, that's a good thing. The problem with the community banks, and it's just volume. There's only so many people who can handle that, and typically, not always, but typically, they don't have the high volume capabilities, the digital application that some of the larger banks have. So let's talk about the larger banks, the regionals and the national banks. Typically, what you're finding is they do have a digital interface. So at Key, we have a digital interface. It's allowed us to take thousands of applications every hour. That's great, but you don't have the personalized touch that you have with the community. So I just ask, think about your situation. If do you have that relationship already established? That would be things to think about as you're choosing between, am I going to do it? Am I going to go down the path of community or regional? Everybody's asking about timetables, and I understand. Timetables is a great question. I'm going to share Jamie Warder's opinion here. This is not the opinion of Key Bank. It's certainly not the opinion of the SBA. This is just when I look at volumes, when I look at us trying to figure out how we're going to process all of these, I do not think anyone should expect from the time you put your application in to actually getting funded. I think that at the least 7 to 10 days. Now we're seeing some people get in earlier, but I don't want you counting on that. And that's only if that application is perfect, like we said before. I think the minute there's back and forth and, oh, we didn't have this document, you're extending that time. So that's why I think it's so important to get the application right. So those are best guesses. I think we'll know more. Probably if we have this webinar in 5 days, I'd be able to give you a better sense of how much time it's going to take to process. But right now, that's my best guess based on, what I'm seeing. And then the final thing I'll address, and I'm going to turn it over and turn it to Gil or Larice on anything they might add. There's a real question about, you'll see this idea of banks are shut down, or they're slowing, or they're kind of backing off. Wells Fargo, actually, they got up to a certain point, and then they said, we can't take any more. They've since come out this morning and said, we will take some more. I'll tell you what this is. This is banks not wanting to overpromise, because although banks aren't given a limit, they're not saying, hey, Key, here's how much you can do with the PPP program. There is, so far the program is funded for $350 billion. Right now, our branches of government are talking about extending that, and there's a $250 billion extension addition on the table. It's not passed yet. But this is what I think the reason that banks are kind of slowing a little bit is not that they don't want to help. It's just they don't want to take applications that they then can't fulfill. So I would just say, get your application. If you haven't done it yet, sooner rather than later, I think would be a good piece. And then the last piece before I turn it over, my last nugget, I do think banks, they will probably, there's a whole bunch of reasons that they need to, there's laws and reasons that they need to know their customer. KYC it's called. They need to understand the customer. For this reason, I believe you probably have the best chance with a bank that you have a relationship with. That doesn't mean that you can't go to another bank. I'm not saying that. I'll never say that. But if you have a checking account with a bank, I think that's a great place to start for your PPP loan, because it just cuts down the request. That means if you've already had an account, they've already done some of the regulatory work that they have to do for a new client or customer. They've done that work to have the account. So now for PPP, they don't have to do that work again for you. And I think that's a really important consideration. So with all of that, I think I'll just stop. Gil, I'll turn it over to you for any thoughts and what you're seeing at the SBA. The SBA has been just such a great partner in this. They weren't expecting 10 days ago to get this program either. So Gil?
Hey, Gil, before you get started, we did have a question from Rita Singh. Rita, did you want to unmute your mic and open your video so that you can ask your question?
So my question is, when we fill this application, Jamie mentioned, I'm very well aware that you have to submit all these documentation, but most of the applications online, when you are filling, it does not allow you to submit those documents. So I think the dilemma we are all facing right now, and some of our clients, is who to send those documents, because most of the banks are closed and not very many people are available, to either answer your call or we have an email address.
Rita, it's a great question. I'll take a shot on that. And you're right. It depends on your bank and their capabilities. Some banks, and I'll talk for Key at this point, we are collecting the application and all documents at once, and signatures. We're getting the whole package together. Mm-hmm. Other banks are just capturing the information. It'll move into processing, and then when it gets to an underwriter, they're going to reach out and tell you what documents they need. So in that case, where they might not have just had the technology to get the documents up front, have those documents ready, because how it should work would be there when your loan gets to be processed, they're going to be calling, and I think you want to be ready to email or get those documents straight over to them. If you can't send them right now because you don't know who to send them to, I think my advice would probably be, it probably makes sense to wait until the underwriter gets to your loan, and then they'll request those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one more question, is KeyBank is accepting applications for those businesses also who are not their clients?
Yes, they are.
They are.
But as I said, it'll be harder for Key to process those because there'll just be additional steps for non-existing customers. So it's not that they're not accepting, it's just, I will say it'll be a slower process for those individuals.
Thank you.
Erica, would you like me to pop in now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Erica and the President's Council for holding this Zoom conference. And I want to thank LaRousse and Jamie for being on it. Both of you covered a lot of territory. I'd first like to make one comment about something Jamie said. I think the banks are doing a great job. I think they're all pitching in and things are working pretty well. And as Jamie said, to put together a $350 billion program in a week, I think is an amazing. It's also amazing because it took work on behalf of the federal government, the Treasury, SBA, and the private sector of the banks to make this work in a week. And it is working. If you just look at the figures as of last night, $100 billion have been approved and submitted into the system. That $100 billion represents commitments to 400,000 small businesses across the nation. And that's a heck of a lot in the first few days of the program. So I think everyone worked quickly. There might have been some hiccups and bumps on the way, but that's traditional for something brand new. But obviously it's working quite well, as the figures say. So I think the banks are doing a really great job. The large banks, the community banks, the mid-sized banks, they're all participating. The credit unions, the non-bank financial institutions are participating, and it's working well. Maurice made a comment about cash flow. I'd like to talk about that for a minute. Cash flow is very important. And right before I went on this call, I got a call from a lady who has a business that employs about 150 people in the Canton-Akron area. And she said, things are off, but thank God I have a line of credit from my bank. And she's using her line of credit along with applying for the PPP program, the Triple P program. So as LaRue said, remember and look at cash flow. Cash flow is very important. You have a line of credit, like the young lady said in Akron or Canton, she's using her line of credit. Another thing about cash flow, if you have an SBA loan, the SBA loan has forgiven your next 6 months payments, both principal and interest. You don't have to make them, SBA is making them to the bank. So that helps your cash flow immediately, that you don't have to make them if you have an SBA loan. And now just switching back to the programs we had, Reese asked me to talk about the economic injury loan program for a minute. The plus on that program is that you get a $10,000 or up to a $10,000 cash advance that is forgiven, and it's forgiven whether you're approved or not. It's basically based on the number of employees you have, up to $10,000. For every employee, you get $100,000. And I've been told that notifications and deposits and checks started to go out earlier this week, and hopefully within the rest of this week and next week, the rest of the checks and notifications will go out from that program. But I think the program now that is the one that people should consider is that Triple P Paycheck Protection Plan or program. As Jamie said, the banks are doing that. It's quite expedited. To get everything done in 10 days, I think is quite remarkable. The agency has asked the banks that after approval that you close the loan within 5 days. And if you look at the concept of the program is to make sure that you have certain funds to bring back or keep employees, and also to pay certain expenses. Those certain expenses are rent, interest on any mortgage payments you have, and utilities. You take that and you combine that with your, you take your average monthly payroll for 2019, you do 2.5 times that, and you combine it with those 3 other operating expenses, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities, and that comes out with the amount of money that you're eligible for, as long as it doesn't go over $10 million, and that's the amount of money that is forgiven. There's one caveat, though. Salaries and benefits must be 75% of the total package, which means your utilities, interest on mortgage, and rent cannot exceed 25% of the package. So you have to look at that and the ratios there. And that's the amount that would be forgiven. Self-employed people, as Jamie mentioned, independent contractors, sole proprietors are eligible, and they're eligible for the program starting tomorrow, April 10th. It's opened up to independent contractors, self-employed, sole proprietors. And I think that gives you an overview that if you couple with what Jamie says, I think you have a good idea of where the program is and what it does. And the idea is to ensure that people have the money to keep going during the coronavirus outbreak, and that everyone will emerge intact and still open at the end of the outbreak. If you have questions from the SBA side, please feel free to call the district office. Let me give you the district office number. It's 216-522-4180. 216-522-4180. Please call. We've turned our office basically into a call center. We're trying to staff the phones 7 days a week. During the 5-day work week, we've been typically getting about 700 to 1,000 calls a week, and then you add another 50 or 60 over the weekend, and you can see how we are basically a call center these days, and we're doing it with approximately a staff of 9 or 10 people. And with that, I think we have time for questions, Erica.
Yeah, so let me jump back in. Thank you, Gil and Jamie. Great information. One question I do want to ask you real quick, Gil, you mentioned something about the PPP and the forgiveness because you broke it down that the payroll portion of that cannot exceed 75%. So is that just the only portion that's being forgiven, or the entire 100%?
It's my understanding that the whole 100% is forgiven, not just the payroll. That's my understanding. Also, we are paying the banks a 1% interest on it. We are paying the banks. You are not. So it's a no interest cost to you. Also, we are paying the banks an upfront processing fee for it, and that processing fee varies depending on the amount of the loan, and that fee does not have to be paid by the borrower either. So there's no cost to the borrower here. Oh, but I do want to remind borrowers that when you fill out that application that Jamie talked about, you have to be very accurate and truthful, because you're responsible for all the information that you submit. You know, typically banks will do due diligence and verify certain things. They will do that in this process as well. But to help expedite it, the agency has asked you in the application process to make certain statements and certifications. So you're responsible as borrowers, as business people, for everything you put into that application and the calculations.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in real quick. We have a question from Rebecca. I'm sorry, not Rebecca. Rashana. Rashana asks, when applying for the Triple P on April 10th, are those documents needed different from what was previous?
I think it's the same process. If you want to come in on that, add some more, but I think it's the same process.
I agree.
We do have a couple of people on the line also who have applied. I do have one that has indicated that they have been approved for the SBA EIDL loan. Most have applied for the PPP. Someone asked, does home-based business qualify for these programs?
Yes, they're a business. And you apply either as an independent contractor, sole proprietor, or if you have employees, apply that way, but you're eligible for the Triple P program. And remember, if you are self-employed and you're a sole proprietorship or an independent contractor, the date to start your application is tomorrow. So the timing is very good for you.
Beth Price is asking, do you have to apply for the maximum amount?
No. Jamie, do you want to continue on that one?
No, I think the maximum amount is just a cap, is the amount that you can apply for is $10 million or 2.5 times your payroll, but your requested amount can be any your requested amount can be either 2.5 times payroll or 10 million, whatever is less. I'm getting that wrong. You could apply for up to 2.5 times payroll. Unless it's 10 million, then you can only apply for 10 million. That's the way to say it. And you could apply for less. You just ask for less. Although, just given the terms of this and the forgiveness provision, like you'd really want to look at that and make sure that makes sense for you. That'd be a good thing to talk with, an accountant. But there might be cases where it doesn't make sense to take the full amount. But I've never seen a program that's so advantageous to the business. So I'd really make sure that it makes sense for you not to take the most you can take.
Could I ask Jamie a question?
Yeah.
Jamie,
Sure.
what is the smallest amount that you would look at? Somebody that has $50,000, $25,000?
Yeah, we're certainly seeing those. It's the sole proprietor who's paying themselves and the gig economy worker. It could be those levels. It could be 25,000. It could be 40,000. In that case, you can go up to 100,000. Like if you're self-employed, you can go up to 100,000, not more than 100. We're certainly seeing those smaller loans, Gil.
Now, Jamie,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, here. Jamie, can you tell me, because I know we're utilizing this phrase of forgiveness, what are the provisions and tracking mechanisms that the financial institutions are going to be utilizing to determine if they've met that criteria, and at what period are we going to evaluate that?
Louise, I don't have a good answer on that. I don't know here sitting here. I would probably go to SBA.gov to figure that out. And instead of me trying to do that translation, I'll ask all of you to go. Sorry, I don't have the expertise on that.
Okay, but I will tell, all the businesses that are on the line, that becomes where we talked about that cash flow. Based on that forgiveness, you want to consider, because the key word is initially that is still a loan that you're initiating. So you want to be able to make sure that you can service this debt if for any reason it wasn't forgiven at that time. So as you're applying for multiple loans besides the SBA, keep that in consideration as you're making that determination for your organization.
That's probably a better answer, Larry, to the last question that was asked, which can I apply for less?
Yes.
The answer is yes. The quickest answer is yes, you can apply for less. You don't have to apply for the most you qualify for. And the consideration would be just what you said, which is, hey, if 100% of it's forgiven, apply for as much as you can, but know that that requires certain parameters to be met. So I think that's right, Larry. You answered that better than I did.
And remember, you have to meet those parameters, and if you don't, it's your responsibility.
That's right.
Saying.
I have a couple of other questions. Tamika Taylor asked, don't have employees but use 1099s. How does that impact the application?
The 1099 businesses are eligible to apply starting tomorrow, April 10th.
Yep. And that would then become one of the documents that, I didn't mention that, but that would become a critical document, because that effectively is your proof of payroll. The 1099 becomes your proof of payroll.
And it kind of goes back to, I think both Gil and Jamie they've emphasized the preparation part of this, making sure that you have all your proper documents. It doesn't really matter the type of business or the sort of organization that you have, LLC, sole proprietor. You want to make sure that if you don't understand what those documents are, that you get an accountant to assist you through that, to make sure you have those 941s, those 1099s that have been properly filed timely, to make sure you have those profit and loss statements. And then two, I'm going to continue to say this word cash flow, to make sure if these turn into loans in the future, that your business properly cash flows, so you don't get yourself in trouble in a long-term part of this, of acquiring these dollars. So
I have an additional question from Shanae McCoy. Shanae says she's applied online for an SBA loan, including the PPP, on April 5th. She has not received confirmation or any correspondence. She has rental properties and one employee. and is dealing with a lack of rent payments. Should she apply at a bank or hold off until she receives correspondence from the application completed online?
So I'm going to read this. I'm going to answer in two ways. The first kind of sub question is it odd that since I've submitted my application, I haven't heard anything? I'm just going to say I don't know even what bank you're part of. I don't think that's odd because of the sheer volume. And by the way, the banks are all operating with most of their staff, remote, just like all of us are. So my guess is this is just sheer volume. The second question is, well, should I apply at more than one bank? It's a tough question, and I'm not going to, especially with Gil on the phone, say you should apply to more than one bank, because the spirit is pick a bank and apply. But I'll stop my answer there.
I'll say they're all good banks out there. They're all good banks. But I think Jamie made an earlier point. It's best to deal with the bank that knows you. And banks, borrowers typically have a lending relationship with a bank. That is very helpful. Also, if you don't have a lending relationship, you traditionally have an operating account, and the bank knows you through that. So I would go to the bank that knows you the best, as Jamie said, bank that you've been working with traditionally. But they're all good banks out there. You're free to go wherever you choose.
Rita Singh has a question. Rita, if you want to unmute.
My 2 cents, somebody asked, in what circumstances the loan will be forgivable, and what I have, researched so far into this is that if you use those funds when you are given this loan on the, on your mortgage, on your utilities, and if they are used on those specific things in your business, then you obviously considered for that forgivable. If you use for some other things in your business, then it will not have a better chance of forgiveness. That's what I think. I know that a lot of clients have been asking us, what makes it forgivable. I think that's why it is so important for businesses when they get this loan to keep good financial records to later on ask for forgiveness. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Let me just add one clarification there. The other items besides the monthly salary times 2.5, the other items are rent, monthly rent, utilities, and interest on the mortgage payment. Just the interest, not the principal, just the interest on the mortgage payment.
Janae did add a point of clarification that her application was submitted through SBA.gov, not a bank, and she still has not received confirmation or correspondence.
Through SBA.gov. Does that mean you applied through the economic injury program?
Janae, if you want to unmute yourself and answer the question.
Does that mean you applied to the economic injury disaster loan program, not to the PPP?
She said yes to that.
Yes. Okay, good. The next question I have for you, did you apply on or after March 30th?
Yes.
Okay, good. So that makes you eligible for the $10,000 or up to $10,000 forgivable cash advance, which is based on the number of employees you have, $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. I was told, and some small businesses have verified this, that they actually have received emails or letters from the processing center of those loans that they have been approved and that their $10,000 cash advance is either in their account or is coming. The letters are going out now. The emails are going out now. But just like Jamie said, there's a heck of a lot of small businesses that have applied, and I think we're going out in as they came in. So you will hopefully within the next week or so get your notification and get the cash advance that is forgivable.
Thank you.
Larice, you can go ahead. There are no more questions right now.
Okay, so again, I just want to emphasize this. One thing I do, Gil, can you do me a favor and repeat that contact number that you gave? Because I think that's very important. I think we're going to have questions that maybe some people just didn't ask on the
Okay,
call.
for the district office number is 216-522-4180. Also, for those of you that applied for the economic injury loan, let me give you the Service Center 800 number there. It's 800-659-2955. 800-659-2955. And that's the Customer Service Center for those of you that have applied for the economic injury loan.
Thanks for sharing that, Gil. And again, like I think everybody has emphasized at this point is, if you are applying to a bank and you have a prior relationship, if you've been trying to call the numbers at the 1-800 numbers that have been given and you're having difficulties, reach out to your banker. A lot of them are still working remotely, and have them assist you through the process. So if you have that existing relationship or you're used to working with a particular branch and you have a direct contact, make sure you're utilizing that. And again, your accountant is going to be key to you as you're acquiring additional dollars for your business to ensure that you're paying attention to cash flow. I don't want you to just think about now, but think about the future impact this may have with all the uncertainties of how long it's going to last as well. Those all have to be put into consideration as you're utilizing the dollars being acquired. And then for me, Erica, it's just understanding the great partners and the people in this city that can help. Of course, the President's Council put this call on today, and we want to thank you again for that. We have great organizations like HFLA, we have ECDI, the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, and also reach out to your municipalities. That's something people aren't talking about. You have organizations, I see Cleveland Heights put something out that they're helping with some things. The city of Cleveland put out that they have a loan as well at 0%. So make sure you're reaching out to the cities where your business exists. Talk to your council people, your local public officials as well. And then CLE, we're here as well to help. Feel free to reach us. We're at 216-800-9021, or you can go to cleconsultingfirm.com and you can find more information about us as well. And we do have staff that is just dedicated to this right at this point. So Erica, thanks again for having me on as well.
Absolutely. This went really, really fast.
Yes.
It's a very quick hour. I know this is a very robust conversation, and based on responses, again, we did have to close out the registration, but we feel like there may be a need for part 2. I do know that I have a conversation with something that we're going to be announcing later today, but have to wait for that permission to do so. So definitely we'll be following up with that. So Stan, if you want to put my next set of slides up, and then we'll just close out for today. If you all have any other questions, we definitely want to give you an opportunity to ask those final questions now before we close out. So I'll just wait a moment to see if anyone has any additional questions. All right. So as we are focusing on sustaining and revitalizing our Black businesses and the communities that we serve, magnified is the importance of our participation in the census, which drives the allocation of over $675 billion each year in funding for health clinics and hospitals, fire departments, college tuition assistance, education programs such as Head Start, free and reduced lunches, Medicare, and so much more. Equally important is our responsibility to exercise our right to vote. We've provided links so that you can request your vote by mail ballot and also follow up to make certain that your ballot was received. If COVID has done nothing else, it has demonstrated the gaps in our health system, as well as the significant disparity between our counterparts. We recognize the stakes are enormously higher for small businesses. These entities, usually sole proprietors or businesses with fewer than 25, 10, or even 5 employees, are the very most vulnerable, particularly neighborhood serving businesses and businesses owned by people of color are in urgent need of a lifeline. We're here to help, and that's why we're having this webinar today. The organizations listed on your screen are working intentionally and collaboratively to ensure businesses not only have information, but access to viable resources. As we webinar, I again encourage and welcome each of you to contact the President's Council via email, phone, or web. A link to today's webinar, along with the slide presentation and a needs survey link, will be shared with each participant. We ask you to complete that survey. As with partnership with CLE Consulting, we will be providing at the President's cost services through CLE Consulting to complete all of your documents for submission for one of the SBA loan products. Again, at the President's cost, those who complete the survey, we will select 5 businesses to receive service from CLE Consulting to complete and submit your documents for one of the SBA loan products. Thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to connecting with each of you. If there are no final questions, Jamie, Gil, and Larice, thank you so very, very much for all of your expertise, for sharing your information, for being a direct contact for each of our participants and the communities that we serve. So thank you all again.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you.